Okay, we're going. It's time to start talking shit on everybody.
Yes. It's so funny because we start recording and we've already had like 10 or 15 minutes of pretty good conversation, and we're like, why weren't we recording this whole thing?
Yeah. So, okay. Welcome to Tenfold AI Podcast. Heather, Matt. Hello.
Matt, Heather, hello.
We were talking about like getting 10,000 hours in something, in anything. And we were talking about it in terms of like, we just had some meetings with some different founders and how there's this thing that happens, but it happens with everything. Like, and I was using this example of like I'm writing some new drum parts right now for a new song. And right now it's like all in my frontal lobe. Like none of it is in my hands and fingers and feet yet. And it's like, and it's just one of those things where eventually that stuff will go from my like more executive function, and then it will kind of trickle its way down into my body a little bit. And you're kind of talking about how you notice that in founders where some of these things have become intuition, almost like you are feeling these different milestones in your body. You could never describe it at all, but there's just something about it. And I think we have been slowly over the last, like, since launching our beta, and now I would say particularly in the last 3 months, that our like value proposition has started to get more and more into our bones of like, okay, it's crystal clear at this point. So
Yeah.
it's a fun place to be.
Well, and it's like when you have two founders, and I'm sure it varies depending on the two individuals every single time, but I think anytime you got two people needing to come to an agreement in the early days, it's interesting and it can get rocky because you're like, no, I'm seeing this over here and I'm seeing this and we should go this direction. And like there can be some of that tug of war. But yeah, once you've been doing it a while and you've seen the same trends as a team, you start to make those decisions a little more like sometimes you'll ping me like this is the direction, this is it. And I'm like, I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
Like
Yep.
we're more lockstep because we're experiencing the same problems from our incorrect hypothesis before, so it's just the iteration process gets a little less painful. I think also you kind of learn to just not be so married to your own ideas and think more like an experimenting kind of scientist than a, I don't know, egomaniac.
Yeah, you become like a failure expert is really what it is.
Yeah.
And I think there's something beautiful. Like for the most part, I've always started a company in a partnership and like really intentionally. I think it does bring up like it causes some heartache. It causes some like there are challenges to it. It is not without challenge. I've always viewed it though as it's like all of the challenging bits are accelerated. You know what I mean? It's like you could either have this like low grade difficulty, but there's something about a partnership where if you can manage to like you said, like set your ego aside, not be married to these ideas, there is an element of like two people really battling it out for what they see something to be, that it allows you to chisel away at it before you take it into the open market,
Yeah.
which is it's such a delicate dance, because if you're a founder, it's because you're kind of like hard-headed, truthfully. I mean, you're willing to beat your head up against the same wall over and over and over again and keep coming back. And so if you're kind of like fighting for a vision with somebody else and that person is also that way, it either destroys you or it makes something really amazing because you're both chiseling away at this marble with such intensity.
Totally. Totally. I just interviewed Rick Burgess yesterday, our sales trainer, and we love him. He's just such a wealth of like wisdom, like sales wisdom. And he's said this before. He mentioned it on the podcast. He said, sales is a failure driven game. And so is business, especially founder, startup, software, the failure driven game. I mean, isn't the game to uh, like it's all about recognizing your failures and adjusting yourself before the market crumbles you.
Yes, exactly.
Like I'm going to be the first to say I was wrong because if I'm the last to say I was wrong, I'm way too late.
Amen.
And
Yes.
I get goosebumps because that's also like fucking life.
Hmm.
Like that's also fucking life.
Yeah.
Like if you don't discipline yourself, the world will discipline you.
Hmm.
Like that's where the rubber meets the road. So I mean, I've said it before. I'm very grateful and humbled by just the amount of like personal growth opportunity that I've experienced from this promo journey. Like many dark night of the soul moments because in order to spar with someone else and defend your idea, you have to first spar with yourself and defend your idea to yourself. Like you find out what you're made of.
My God. Yeah. It's just daily battle with self-doubt, but still going despite like that's the okay. You teed me up for the thing that I wanted to tell you actually brilliantly.
Told you,
So
lockstep, man.
yeah, exactly. Okay. You were talking about Rick, which Rick shouts out to Rick. He's the man. I mean, just even the way that he operates and communicates, it's like to call it sales training is sort of like cheapens it, to be honest with you. It is mindset. Like primarily when you catch him going off the cuff, it is the dude is just all about mindset. And that I really respect. I appreciate those people so much.
Yeah.
And speaking of mindset, one of the terms that kind of he uses in his organization is head trash. So this is like, where are you telling yourself a story that maybe isn't serving your end goal, right? You and I had a discussion this week about head trash, like just kind of where it's at and, where just unpacking that type of stuff. I won't go into any specifics. And one thing that you had brought up, we'll cut this if you don't want me to say it,
No, I'm
was
fine.
just
Go for it.
you had brought up this idea of like wrestling with, I don't know, wrestling with the identity of being a marketer and having so much expertise in that space. And I found that to be really interesting. And I thought about it a lot. And I was thinking about it again last night. I was even talking with Maggie about it. And then I was just really struck with when we had our work day yesterday. I left that work day and I was like, fuck, Heather really understands AI now. Like really a good first principles
I almost spat my
understanding.
coffee out.
Well, I mean, hear me out. Like I don't think that somebody needs to understand like how a large language model is weighted or how to fine tune it or anything like that. I mean, these are just like the tactical elements of it. It's like in the same way that somebody can understand the principles of SEO and maybe how to build a project around it or even sell SEO. You
Mhm.
don't, I mean, you don't need to know how to create all of your meta tags and that kind of stuff and do your indexing to have a good, like, foundational understanding of things. And I was just really struck by when we were kind of going through that brainstorming session yesterday and you were, just using terms and phrases in the way that you do. I was like, fuck. Heather really gets how AI could get squirrely if released in an organization. And
Mm.
that's a level of understanding that a lot of people do not grasp. You know, like it's at the bottom of all of that, it's you have an understanding of like inference, you know, like inference training. You get that general concept and how a model built on inference, you might not even know that that's the word for it, but you understand foundationally inference-based models cannot be released into organizations. That is just an absolute recipe for dumpster fire. So I did really want to like highlight, I was struck by that yesterday after our work day. I was like, man, you know, if your head trash is losing this marketing side of you, boy, you've like really had a really accelerated education in AI and have really taken to it well, which I think is fucking awesome.
Mm. Well, I've I've always, when it comes to marketing, digital marketing in my career, I've I've never had a desire to want to learn how to do anything. That might sound terrible. Like, that might sound really bad, but, like, I knew I don't want to build a website. I don't want to manage an ad campaign in a digital platform. I don't want to be a tactician, and always knew that. But what I did want was to, more than anything, I wanted to close the knowledge gap between the business owner and that tactic. Like, I wanted to fully understand on a deep level why it should matter to that business owner and to be able to communicate that. And that's where sales comes in, but also huge function of marketing, right? Knowing how to explain really complex things. And the more complex, the more fascinated I was by it, because that's a bigger challenge. Bar none, Pro Mode and what we're doing has been the most steep learning curve for getting my brain from my knowledge base a year and a half ago to now to be able to explain to a business owner why this matters.
Yeah.
And why do I get into that? I don't know. Maybe I'm a glutton for punishment, but I also, like, my whole life, I've really just enjoyed the ability to explain things and make something make sense. And
Mhm.
maybe that's rooted in my own existential ongoing crisis about the universe and God and why are we here and what is the meaning of life and blah, blah. But maybe it's rooted in that. Like, if I can make something make sense, then that feels like, um, the world is a little less confusing.
Yeah. It's so funny. Yeah, that is really good self-awareness because I see that in yeah, I see that in you. I see that in you all the time. And I think, yeah, it's cool that like that constant pursuit of learning, like the idea to learn something well enough that you can convey it is there's something I feel that too. I know exactly what you're talking about. For me, it manifests itself as like if some it's like I need you to know how cool this is. Like I need to sense excitement of like this is interesting, this is cool, this is different. Like that to me, I resonate with that a ton. Hey, I've got a little present for you. Sam
Did you
Alt
make another commercial?
no. Actually,
Okay. Oh, did you do a, what's it called, a cameo? Did you pay him $50 to say happy
yeah.
birthday?
Yeah, you think Sam's cameo is
Well, maybe their $10 million consulting projects aren't
yeah.
selling like he would like.
Okay. Tweet from Sam Altman yesterday. If you tell ChatGPT not to use M dashes in your custom instructions, it finally does what it's supposed to do. Uh, Funny, I was looking in the comments, told us to stop using M dashes.
Well, I think he buried the lead there because what it's supposed to do is use proper grammar. And if proper grammar includes the M dash, you'll see it.
Exactly. I'm telling you, I made the mistake again this week. You want to talk about glutton for punishment?
You are for sure on many fronts.
I made the mistake again this week of like, I'm going to tackle this problem again. Yes, sir. Just for some reason, I was just like, okay, I'm super interested in, I'm like very interested in language models to begin with, but I am really interested in the ability to just manipulate them. It's just something that is just like an unending pursuit that I find to be so fascinating. And so I'm like very interested in like, could like to tune a language model to just speak in emojis, for example. These types of things. I'm just fascinated by trying to do them. This week, I tried to get the M dash out of everything again this week. And still, I mean, I got probably a 80% reduction in M dashes in our like outputs for pro mode. But it is just one of those weird things where the there was it was just basically incorrect punctuation being used and then a computer that started using correct punctuation is like the situation that we're finding ourselves in with the M dash. So I don't know. I don't know why I brought that. I just thought it was funny because we're always talking about M dashes, but
Yeah, I talked to a longtime content strategist, copywriter this week. She's worked at giant agencies and big companies, and the M dash came up, and she's a defender of it. She's like, it's proper grammar. I'll remove them sometimes, but yeah, she's like, AI is highlighting, because we were talking about all the things AI highlights. And I'm saying lack of strategy. AI is highlighting that because if you're in a marketing department and you can just prompt your way through all of your marketing, it highlights that you really probably never had a strategy to begin with. Anyway, I digress from that. But she was saying it's also highlighting the lack of adherence to grammar because we see AI and we're like, I know that's AI when it's a raw output from ChatGPT. I can tell that's AI. Well, is it because it's in proper grammar? You know, like I can
yeah.
only reference the movie Idiocracy so many times, but I think of the movie, I like how language has devolved to the point where,
Hmm.
they buy everything at Costco and
Yes. Okay. Hold on, I'm gonna shut the store. Okay. Hypothetical situation. Let's talk about this. If you could, would you prefer so I'm talking about the idea of people who are really fixated on the ability to spot AI content. Ooh, I can tell that that's AI when XYZ conditions are met. Okay. Now, if given a choice, you're doing public communications, marketing, whatever for a company, and you're using AI. If you had the ability to bake in errors into the output so as to not lead your audience on that you're using AI, would you bake in misspellings, improper grammar, like weird, like faulty punctuation? Would you make that choice?
um I personally would not because I don't I can't think of a circumstance where I would want that output. Uh, but I would like I write. Use a lot of hyphens, probably too many. I use a lot of parentheses.
You
So
know, a
if it could
hyphen,
mimic
I gotta tell you, a hyphen is just an M dash that's on the fence.
well, I know it's a non-committal M dash, but that's my style. That's exactly what I want to do. So I would do that. But I mean, I don't know. If people have misspellings in 2025 with autocorrect and Grammarly? What are you doing?
Yeah. So I find this interesting. So everybody's really afraid of the idea of being outed for AI writing their content, but I would venture to say that even if somebody is doing human written content, that they're going to edit it for damn near as much perfection as they can get into the mix. So nobody's intentionally going to make errors. Nobody's going to leave human created errors in the mix. I struggle to understand the difference between these two things.
You bring up a good point. Yeah.
So like if you if you wanted to use AI but you were nervous about it being too perfect and you wouldn't intentionally put errors in there to make it seem more human. On the flip side of that, if you are a human doing it and before you publish it, you make it absolutely perfect, there's a disconnect, right? There's some like cognitive dissonance that these folks are having with how they're thinking about this.
Hmm.
I like more and more, I'm just leaning towards that these are people that don't have anything to say. These are people that don't have anything interesting to talk about. You know what I mean? So like whoever assembled it doesn't matter, right? It does not matter what assembly occurred because we're saying right now that the end product will be made as close to grammatically perfect as possible. Whether it started with the human or whether it started with a large language model, at the end of the day, you're going to want that as like you're going to want the syntax, the punctuation, the grammar, all of that as perfect as possible. So regardless of who originated it. But it just kind of like leads me to believe, but what is being talked about? What are the ideas that are being conveyed? That to me seems like the most important thing, right?
Yeah. I keep thinking is like, what's the root of the concern? And are we bringing into question, like, what is communication? Like, what is conveying a thought?
Hmm.
And just imagine, like, 100 years ago, or probably longer, 150 years ago, before the typewriter came out, right? If you were writing communication, you were doing it by hand. And part of your communication was your handwriting, your penmanship, like the paper that you wrote on, the kind of ink that you used, your pen stroke compared to someone else. Like that was just as much part of the authenticity of your communication as the words you chose.
Hmm.
And then typewriters came out, people started typing, and that was a removal from that main, personal touch. And I'm sure that people then were saying, that's not really writing. That's not, you know, that's just your thoughts on a page. Like, where's the emotion of it? Like, so there's these different iterations of communication and the next, emails and then the autocorrect. No, I know you don't spell that well. And now it looks like you do. I know very smart people who can't spell for shit, but you'd never know it,
Yeah.
you
Yes.
know?
Yes. Hold on, quick tangent. I'm getting really nervous with this sun coming on me right now that people might think I have some kind of studio light on, and that's making me feel like,
You don't want to look like a tryhard.
yeah, yeah, like, hey. Um, okay.
It's okay. It's not bad.
Do you remember this? So, did you like, did you learn cursive? Was that a thing that you did?
Yeah, I never had good handwriting.
Did you ever have the experience of like you're sitting there practicing your penmanship? I remember this in school, like, and your hand would start cramping, and you'd be like, "Oh my!" It felt like David Goggins at times when you're sitting there. I don't know if you had the lines where it's like solid line on the top and the bottom, dash line in the middle, and working on your letters. It'd be like, "Oh my God, is my hand gonna fall off?"
David Goggins. Okay, do you know? I don't think I've ever told you this. You know, I was homeschooled. Every homeschool family has a completely different thing going on. Like every homeschool experience is as different as every family is different. My family had this thing for our penmanship. We had to write in notebooks. I don't have one just like it, but it was a big, like, college rule notebook. Every day we had to write for at least an hour to 2 hours, depending on how much time we had. We had to copy the Bible
Wha-
in cursive.
Whoa.
I did this for probably 5 years. Every day for an hour or two, I had to write in cursive, copying from the Bible, and I had stacks of notebooks. I did not finish the entire Bible, but I got probably 2/3 of the way through.
That's crazy.
So there have been a couple times where you're like, Heather, it's just over and over again. The reps, you got to like, have you ever done anything every single day? Like, and I'm like, dude, I've waxed on, waxed off with the best of them.
The Bible in cursive.
Bible
That's
in cursive. And you could barely read it. My handwriting, for as much as I had to do that kind of like just repetitious stuff, yeah, my handwriting is not great.
We were having a conversation with our nephews recently, and they're both in high school. They're two oldest, and we were talking about lockers, and I was like, "Man, I remember getting a new locker combination every year, and for like a month and a half, it was just pure panic that I would remember that combination." And then and we were talking about like, you go to your lockers, you have, freaking 4 minutes in between class. You gotta pee, you gotta go to the drinking fountain, you gotta go get your books, just like constantly
Yeah.
was this experience. And we were talking to them about this, like, do you ever have classes where your locker's far away, you've got to run? And they're like, yeah, we got lockers. I've never been to it before. And I'm like,
Yeah.
"What do you mean? Where do you put your trapper keepers and your notebooks and your all of this?" And they're like, "Bro, we got like Chromebooks, like everything." I was like, "Wait, you don't have books or anything?" He's like, "No, no, we have like one backpack with our laptop or tablet, whatever they're using, and then everything is on there." And I found there was a part of me that was like, man, you guys don't know what it's like to have your hand cramp as you're taking notes and
Right,
be
right.
lugging around this, you're like doing a rucking challenge or something in between. And so I found myself kind of like doing this thing, you know what I mean? Like doing the thing that I do to other people when they're talking about, I could tell AI wrote this. Um, but so there is an element, like there's an element of it that I get, you know what I mean? But I've also had enough experiences, like just even using GPT as a work companion. I've had the experience of like, oh, you're not doing the thing that I want. You're not like, and just to wrestle with that LLM a little bit. And then ultimately at the end of the day, it's always comes back to my ideas weren't clear before I went into it. You know what I mean? And so I think that even in the age of AI, this is the skill that people will learn. That is, it's like in a great way, it's like deeper than assembly. You know what I mean? So to use an example of something we've talked about, like, you copying the Bible in cursive is like a worthless pursuit outside of just like that discipline of doing something consistently, right? And just, put your head down, get the work in. There's a lot of more productive ways you could get that work in, I believe. But, you know, by and large, completely worthless skill today.
Yeah.
And, but then like those worthless skills, once they become obsolete, they tend to be replaced with like deeper, better skills. I mean, we are like, we're still like, I mean, I don't mean to get like too meta about this, but like, as a species, we're still animals that are evolving, and just each generation that is still alive is basically elevating the problems that the previous generation was solving. in different ways. Like it's always an evolution. Everything is. And so I think the evolution that we go through now is like the skill is not necessarily in the assembly. The skill is in the wrestling with the substance of what's being assembled. And
Mhm.
this to me is like, this is the new skill that everybody will need to learn, is to be able to evaluate their own thoughts, to be able to put their own thoughts into some sort of like computational LLM, and then also be dissatisfied with the output, but then take responsibility for that. Like at the
Mhm.
day, that's on you. There's something about that. Like when I'm wrestling with ChatGPT to kind of like help me through a coding task or something like that. I mean, if it's not, if the thing coming out isn't what I want and it's like within the general parameters of the model's capability, like this is something that should be able to be done here, but it's not at like always,
Yeah.
always at the end of it, it's because my thought process or my logic or my order of operations was fuzzy in there somewhere. It was on me.
Mhm. Yeah, whenever I hear people, which is every day, talk about chatbots in particular, I'd say, they always talk about, I still have to fact check it. I can't trust it. I still have to fact check it. And I'm like, what is it that you're trying to do? Like, what do you want?
Yeah.
Just very confused. Like, okay, you want it to develop a strategy for you based on thousands of successful use cases and to compile tactics and approaches and philosophies to arrive at your perfect strategy, but you're not happy with it because you still feel the need to fact check it. It's like you've joked about this, even with pro mode in the early days, it was almost like business owners were like, I'm just supposed to push go and then money happens, right? And it's like, it is not about, and maybe this is the core of it, perhaps, it's not about outsourcing your ability to think
Yeah.
at all. In fact, you have to think deeper. You have to you have to think better than you did before AI because everyone else is also using AI and now the standards have risen. Standards for what is an interesting thing to talk about, what's an interesting idea, what's an interesting company to start, an interesting problem to solve. You better start digging into your soul
Yes.
to figure that shit out because it's the abundantly obvious is taken. Like, dig deeper.
Clip that. Clip that. The abundantly obvious is taken. You you nailed it, Heather. You absolutely nailed it. And here's the double-edged sword. Okay, to wrap this up in some like to wrap what you just said in the actual technology of what's going on. So GPT 5.1 was just released. Like really sold as a model that is, I'm going to back up a step. Like I first started playing around with like when I first started playing around with OpenAI's API, it was like, dude, it was like GPT. I mean, 2.5, like, I was like cutting my teeth on some models with like zero inference. Like I'm talking 100 users of inference training on these models. And I was like, whoo, these are hard. This is a really, really hard tool to use. And I remember being a little bit like, I'll never forget it. I was in a coffee shop and I was like, somebody texts me that the API was no longer by invite only. I'd submitted 100 email addresses to get access to. I lied on a lot of applications to get. And then I remember somebody sent me a text message the day that there was no longer a wait list to access the API. And I can't remember exactly what model I jumped into, but it was like it was awesome. It was very awesome. I was like, "Ooh, okay." I'm like feeling it was cool to feel how these things work. But I'm realizing in hindsight, there was hardly any users on it. And so they had no inference training. Like there was no training step to where the models could predict what the user wanted. So the instructions put in, I mean, I'm talking, they were 20 steps labeled one, do this, and like building in the entire like chain of thought and the logic that the model would need to use to complete a task. And now, so like pretty much every release that's come out, the primary difference is that the inference training, there's just more users using it and they're retraining the inference part of those models to be able to predict more and more what the user wants. But here's the thing on the tech side to what you just said, you had said the low hanging fruit. What was the term you said? Low hanging fruit.
Abundantly obvious is already taken.
The abundantly obvious is already taken. So on a foundational level, when these models do like conduct new inference training, they're doing training on the desired outcome of every single user, just a homogeneous amalgamation of desired outcomes from every user. So what this means practically is in marketing. So let's take marketing as an example, and we're going to use a LinkedIn post. So the LinkedIn post, the cool thing about it is when I first accessed the API, I had to tell it what a LinkedIn post was. The model had no clue what that meant to
I
create a
wish I didn't know what a LinkedIn post was.
word.
I hate that platform so much.
Oh my God. Yes. It's like they should. Oh my gosh. Yeah. LinkedIn needs a new tagline. It's like, let's see, what would it be? Like a place where mids become famous or something.
Right. A place to kiss your own ass.
So at any rate, so in those early days, you actually had to define the elements of a LinkedIn post. Well, now with so many data points, like, I mean, a billion users, let's even be conservative and say of those billion users, 5% of them have requested some version of a LinkedIn post. And then as the model receives signals that like, this is what constitutes a LinkedIn post, this is what a LinkedIn post means globally. Now you go into a model and you say, create a LinkedIn post for X, Y, or Z. And what it's doing is it's just saying, okay, the vast majority of people say that this is a LinkedIn post. This is what a LinkedIn post means. So on one hand, you don't have to define that anymore. The user does not need to have the thought of what constitutes a good LinkedIn post because that's been handled in inference training. And this is the trick that inference models will play on us is they will give us a convincing result and tell us, yes, this is a good LinkedIn post because I've learned it from all of my training. But just like you said, like if your goal is attention, right? So if your goal is to get eyeballs on the shit that you're doing as a company, that's the last thing that you would want. You would never, ever, ever want to leave these things up to inference training because then you're just like, you have joined that mid, like it's mid. I mean, there's no other way to say it. That's the definition of the word. That shit is mid. And that's what inference training does is it turns everything mid.
Right. Make me sound like everybody else, and then you wonder why your social engagement, your SEO are all tanking
Mm-hmm. Yep.
because algorithms work in the opposite way.
Yes.
They grab statistically different and unique data to serve to users that they think will like it, not the mean.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You want to do an experiment today? Let's do this. I think open up your chat GPT
Got her.
And let me get on mine. I posted about this at some point this week. I wanted to do it live with you. Okay. So I'm going to put this into the chat of our recording right now. And just to I think to highlight this for people and show it in practice. Okay. Wait. Tell me if you can see this. Do you see that in the chat?
Yes.
Okay, sweet. Okay, let's do this. I want you to open up a new chat window. Let's use GPT 5.1, just released, cutting edge model. And what we're going to do is you and I are going to both do this for our own company. And we're just going to
Okay.
see results. So, okay, for the listeners, what we're doing is we're talking about like the dangers of allowing inference models and chat-based LLMs into companies. And the reason being is inference. So inside of a single user's chat window, the inference training is solely it's solely accountable to you, the user. And so anytime you give the model a positive signal, and this could be copying. So if you're copying text from your chat, those keystrokes are tracked and that's taken as a positive signal. So if this user is taking this output and putting it somewhere else, we need to give them more output like this. And if they, and then if they ask for edits to things or like this isn't quite right, it will adjust that way. But it's only to the user. Like ultimately, as you're talking back and forth with the model, its accountability is to you. Obviously, this has major implications for letting this stuff loose into a company. You've got like 10 people on a team that are working on some project. If they're all in their siloed inference model that is just tuned to what this person likes, even this person's vocabulary. I mean, the range of available vocabulary between one employee to another can 50%. I mean, and so you certainly would not want this set loose in your company. So, just as an experiment to highlight this idea, Heather and I both use ChatGPT as like a work companion, brainstorming, doing little tasks and things like that, which we are 100% on board with. Like, I think that it's amazing to have a personal chat that is tuned to the way that you like to work, to the way that you talk, to your own vocabulary, even. But there has to be a place where all of this shit goes inside of a company where it is like we cannot have everybody's chat personality representing our company publicly. There needs to be some place where this goes and it is analyzed, filtered, appended, whatever the case may be. But it needs to go through something because inherently the way that inference models are built is going to have catastrophic effects inside of a company. So to highlight this, we are both pasting into a new chat in ChatGPT 5.1, and we both have the same prompt. Using only my chat history as reference, list the types of customers that ProMode helps, summarize each of the problems that we help solve in 20 words or less. We're both going to do this, and we're just going to see the results to highlight like how much variance can occur in here.
It's
So,
going to be a ton. I know it's going to be a ton of variance because I know I would guess you've used ChatGPT for our more recent conversations much more than I have. In fact, I was just telling someone yesterday, I'm using ChatGPT less and less and less to the point where I really only use it to make my emails more concise. I write the whole email and then I upload it and say, make it more concise. Because that's my personal struggle is I write my emails are too damn long. And so I need to button them up. And then personal stuff like recipes and, I want to paint a room. So I want to see what it's going to look like after I paint it kind of thing. I use that, but I'm really not using it for brainstorming much at all right now. I'm using Perplexity more than anything. And then maybe I've just kind of outsourced the using AI for brainstorming to you because I know you do a better job of it than I do. But yeah, how do we
yeah,
want to do this?
let's do it. Well, so I do want to So to your point, our most recent discussions, so we just got back from a trip, and so I spent a lot of time on airplanes. And with the most recent discussions that we've been having, it was like pen and paper and a ton of hours in a plane. So I think that the point will even be like further proven here because I'm looking at my results right now, and I would imagine that these results are fairly in lockstep with one another as far as, but the aha moments that we've had are not represented here at all. Okay. So
Mm.
let's do this. You give me your number one customer that promo helps.
Mid-market B2B business owners.
Okay. Let me see here. So the closest one that I have to you, and I'll share my screen. Okay. So my closest one that I have to you is owner operators, small and mid-sized businesses. Okay, what's your problem statement for them?
Marketing is slow, expensive, inconsistent, and agency outputs are low impact. They need high volume, high quality content without hiring or overhead.
Okay, and mine is creating consistent on-brand marketing without hiring a team, turning scattered data into usable content quickly. I think this is going to be a big theme in mine, scattered data.
Yeah,
Built a lot of JSON schema in here.
interesting. So at its face, those two sound like you could use one for the other, like yours versus mine, but truly for a marketing purpose, yours is much more accurate for the problem we solve, the way to say it. And if you're a marketer, you understand like little shifts can make a big difference in positioning and who you're attracting. Yeah, similar, but one is usable and one is not for our purposes.
Right, right. And and furthermore, I mean, like if you were like somebody who does any kind of public messaging, I mean, even if you're like, some senator got caught, hitting on his intern,
Yeah.
and you're doing like crisis management for that. Like, you have like what, 4 seconds for somebody to, I mean, the way that a message needs to occur needs to be so tight, so repeatable, so instantly recognizable that the variation of what we just conveyed between the two of us, even if one of them was right and one of them was less right, at the end of the day, that that's too much variance. I mean, even if it's 10% variance in consistency in and how that is delivered could have catastrophic effects. Okay. What's your second?
Marketing directors, CMOs, marketing managers.
Okay. Hmm. I've got like fractional CMOs, forgot franchise marketers. I don't even have that on my list. Okay. So now tell me yours. What does yours say?
The problem solved there?
Hmm.
Or so marketing directors, they're buried in manual tasks, scattered tools, and approval bottlenecks. Promo delivers workflow efficiency, brand consistency, and measurable content performance.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. Okay. Do you have any franchise affiliate multi-unit in
Yes,
yours?
franchise and multi-location brands.
Okay. Are those combined into the same? Okay. So I have here for franchise marketers, maintaining brand consistency across many locations while empowering franchisees to publish localized content with minimal oversight. What have you got?
That one's probably the most closely aligned. Say brand standards collapse across locations. Promote standardizes messaging while enabling fast, localized content for every franchise.
One thing I'm noticing is yours are like all of yours are taglines.
Oh, yeah.
I'm hearing
I
yours is
can't
like
help it.
taglines and slogans,
Yeah.
which is
Because
another
that's
interesting. Yeah.
that I've used yeah, that's probably the thing I've used or ChatGPT the most for
Mhm.
is that kind of thing.
Yeah. Anything else interesting? Okay, I've got multi-department corporate communications teams, construction, trade, and service-based businesses. Anything interesting jumping out at your on yours?
I have teams handling quote building or sales enablement content.
Mhm. Mhm. What do you have there for the problem?
Uh, where'd she go? Sales teams waste hours creating quotes and proposals. Promo generates consistent brand aligned outputs instantly.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully the concept is clear to everyone. Um, I was even noticed I was revisiting, so I don't know if you remember that this came out like this MIT report dropped like a bomb. I mean, it's been probably 4 months now since it dropped. I was going back and reading through it again recently, and I was fascinated that they called this out. So, let's see here. Where were we at? So, most Gen AI okay, here we go. This is it. Most Gen AI systems do not retain feedback, adapt to context, or improve over time. I mean, they were hitting on this stuff much earlier than I think even they were hitting on this foundational problem in this study. I think much earlier than even we were thinking about, like even that I was thinking of it as a foundational problem. I think I had thought that everybody got this. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I'm realizing that no, they're not. Like people are not quite grasping this concept, but I think it's becoming more and more into the mainstream. I think just simple experiments like the one that we just did, I mean, would just so clearly highlight the issues. The
Yeah.
issues, what like the downside, not necessarily the downside to integrating AI into your company, but just like how to do it, the best practices, which is fascinating. We were living best practices in real time and seeing a major chasm in people's understanding of what's going on, making attempts um, to integrate AI into an organization. And to me, I think the idea of inference trained models, as we just showed with each of our GPTs being like pretty far off.
Mhm.
This to me is going to be the first divergence of best practices. Again, it's going to be one of the things that there's all these things that we look back on, told the famous story of going to boobs.com when we first got the internet in grade school, a thing that, I mean, you know, it's like the beginning of what like there were no firewalls. Nobody nobody knew how to block IP addresses or any of those things. It was just like Wild West internet deployed everywhere to kids. And I mean, and it's like one of those things we look back on is like, oh, no shit. Of course, that's how you do this. Of course, a company needs firewall on its internet. But remember, like virus, like I've not heard of a virus infecting like you've not really heard of that. I mean, granted, there are like legit sophisticated cyber attacks. I'm sure Rob's well aware of that, but that's more like corporate espionage and less like just hackers causing chaos, but so I think inference models is like our first fork in how AI exists inside of companies.
I was just going to ask a question. Is context engineering the answer to inference training? Is that where the fork is? Like, don't use inference trained chatbots, same source AI chatbots for business use. You need context engineering. Like, is that the answer to?
Yeah, yeah, it really is. And the more and more like, because the more and more I have considered this problem, I think the value of an LLM as an individual work companion. So I think that that cannot be replaced. I think the benefits of that on the individual level, it's like your notepad. You know what I mean? I envision that as like everybody is at their desk and they've got that companion and they figure out the workflows that work for them. And that model is kind of tuned to their specific task within that department. I don't think that you could ever do away with that type of thing. However, I do think that whatever comes out of that needs to be injected into some type of context engineering. Like it needs to be injected somewhere. And so, the term context engineering it's new, it's vague, but essentially what we're talking about is how do you assemble the building blocks of something more official? That's basically, you could think of context engineering as that. And it involves, context engineering, like model, I guess you would call it, or infrastructure would have, it would have different categories. It would have, you would want some things always exposed to a large language model with everything that's done. You would want that bit of data to be exposed. And then in other tasks, you wouldn't want certain data in there. You wouldn't want certain information in that task. And so when
Like
we talk
custom settings.
exactly, when we talk about context engineering, let's maybe talk about it in terms of, so sometimes when people think about this, like a model learning something, their perception of it is, well, you just throw everything in there, everything that you have, you just throw in there and it predicts what I want on the other side of it. You don't really want that. Like good context engineering is actually making these intentional decisions of at this step, we leave these things out. At this step, we bring these things in. At this step, it's creative. It's like your temperature settings are really high on this model. And at this step, your temperature settings are super low. That thing is just about as robotic as it gets. So when we talk about context engineering, it's deeper than we're just going to dump everything that we have inside of here and this thing will magically learn what we want. It doesn't work. AI doesn't quite work like that. Yes, you can dump a lot of things in and it will learn a lot of things from those, but there's going to be conflicting information in there. You know what I mean? And so then the decision on when to leave things out and when to add them in becomes a really important thing if you're considering multi-year, multi-department AI adoption. What you leave in is just as important as what you leave out. The amount of creativity and leeway and tools and reasoning that the model has based upon which step is occurring, all really important things. And so yes, the short answer to what you said is yes, context engineering is the way that you would solve that.
But you're just saying context engineering isn't really a rote discipline at this point. It's sort of up for interpretation. Different AI platforms and solutions will have a little different application and even understanding of what context engineering is,
Exactly. Yeah,
which I think is like what else is new. That's even SEO today varies from one agency to the next. If you hire someone to do SEO, they will probably have a little different school of thought or, philosophy on how best to do that. Context engineering will probably maybe always be like that, have different schools
yeah.
and ideas.
Well, it's okay. This like really triggered an interesting thought to me. Like, I do envision a day in which a more sophisticated consumer is looking at some like, I mean, again, I struggle to see a world in which an AI deployment inside of an organization is not built around context engineering. Like it just has to be, right? Because everything is tasks, processes, and inside like an organization itself, like if you think about an org chart, and it context engineering reflects an org chart. It is, at the top of the organization, you have like low tactical tasks, but really high strategic level thinking and tasks. And then that's passed down to people that are a little bit more tactical, but still on like maybe the departmental strategy side. And eventually these things. So context engineering is just a mirror of an org chart. Unless the org chart of corporate America changes, context engineering will be an inherent part of all AI deployment. And I see this future in which the consumers purchasing these tools or this infrastructure will begin to learn enough to where they'll ask questions along the lines of, now walk me through your context protocol here. When do you leave this data out? Tell me, when do you inject this data? How, like, where are your models more deterministic and where are they more probabilistic? Where are the entry points for
Mhm.
various users? And then how do you separate that user's permissions in this org chart? I
Yeah,
think those are the types of questions that people will be asking. Right now, people's understanding of it is like, oh, I just dump everything I have in it and it learns about me. And it's like, okay, that's not an org chart.
interesting. I would imagine those types of questions about context engineering will become really necessary when you get into things like, CFO platforms, AI accounting platforms, and things that are really steering big decisions within a company. It's so interesting that we built Pro Mode to run organic content. That's one way to describe it, right? We say public communications, organic content, the nature of which is inherently subjective. So the outputs are all subjective to the user. They're going to love it, they're going to hate it. So I wonder how we'll see those questions come up in, I don't know, it would take a deep marketing nerd like to really ask those types of questions.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But like, even talking about security, for example, I mean, I think this is a big question. The idea of data security and like, people are reluctant to give training data to large language models. So we see that as a major security feature that people offer is we never use your data for training models. Well, with context engineering, also have this, not only is it a really effective way to deploy AI at a major scale, but it has this like accidental double security feature that, because you have separated, like with when you engineer context for any kind of AI workflow, inherently you have separated all of your proprietary data. So it is like, it's never seen together. It's never like, the things that are seen are these sort of like abstracted chunks of tokens here and there, and they're getting passed down this line of workflow. So you could have a terabyte of data as a company. Let's use CFO as an example, right? So CFO could be using a really strong context model. And the double benefit of that is that in each step, just fractions of your data are being inserted and never associated with other data. So it has this like distributed effect that provides some inherent security. So you could be uploading a spreadsheet that has a bunch of numbers on it, and it could have like your actual financials on that. But the source of that revenue, your customers, what customers are paying on a per unit basis, this is not introduced into the mix until there's a different step in the model. So you don't even have the same AI, never sees the two things together that
Mhm.
would open the door to any malicious activity, because you've separated it all and you've separated it by task. From a security standpoint, you should be really bullish on the idea of context engineering because it fractures all of your data, and assembly is done, like how all of this data is related to one another. That's done by a human. They're the ones that are deciding what's important to see. So like if you have this terabyte of data, it's only fractions of it that are all exposed to language models separately. And so there's never a full picture is never seen by any AI. The only like user in the equation that sees everything together is the human that put it in and the human that's seeing it coming out. So there's like this awesome, awesome like security feature built in to.
Mhm.
Whereas if you were to, for example, the alternative to context engineering might be just like pure retrieval augmented generation. Okay. So what that would be is if you have just pure RAG, no context, no separation of any of it, you have 100% of your data living in one place and you have one AI that has access to all of it. That's a scary
Mhm.
position to be in if security is a concern for you. So
Mhm.
context engineering allows you to ask questions about what's our most sensitive data. Maybe we don't want that in RAG. And so our most sensitive data is going to be stored in this old school CRUD database where we can have AI pull tiny little chunks out of it. And then we can supplement it with something from a RAG over here. And then maybe what we pull from the RAG, that goes to a different model. So anytime AI sees something, it's like, I have no idea what the fuck any of this is. It would, the amount of Sherlock Holmes that you would need to go through I mean, it would cost way too much to actually make sense of any of the data in the workflow. It would just cost way too much money. Like you should just build a company yourself instead of trying to hijack any of this data over here because it is so fractured. But then to the human, it all makes sense on the input and out.
Yeah. So it's like if you wanted a customer service chatbot on your website or wherever, um, for the purpose of like FAQs, but like a better chatbot than we've seen in the last 10, 15 years. You don't want it to be a simple like flowchart chatbot. You want it to be more conversational, more informational. A simple RAG would probably cut it. I mean, as long as the customer knows, okay, we're not pulling your account information or, your specific data, but general company information is held in this repository of friendly public data. But then if you wanted an internal chatbot that's used company wide, and I know, like, my he works at this giant company, and his role is actually data security. He decides who gets what data, and he controls, their enterprise systems to make sure that the right countries and offices get the right data and are blocked from data that is not appropriate for them. But if a company wanted to install a real robust company chatbot, context engineering is a must.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
There's content for HR that's greenlit, and then within HR by role. And like every human in the company has a different level of data access. And that RAG architecture is organizing that appropriately.
Yes. So the context engineering. Yeah. So inside of context engineering, you can have RAG, but like you're engineering it to where it's like, okay, HR is allowed to use this RAG. And then there's another RAG database that, so for example, if I were building this chat bot for Rob's company, like Rob would be the one that would basically, so if he's controlling all of this sensitive data, he would probably be the one that I would talk to build this and be like, okay, where in this do we need a two-factor authentication to, like, somebody needs to receive a text message to a predetermined phone number and they need to type that 6-digit code into this chat before that chat can query this RAG over here. So then you're basically then just creating like an org chart of data where you say, okay, everybody can access this stuff at the very bottom. These users can access this data. You need to type in a 6-digit code for somebody to query this database, so on and so forth. Here are the people that can
Mhm.
add information in here. Here's the format that it needs to be added in here. Here's the approval workflow before that. Yes,
Mhm.
there's a level of much more sophisticated engineering that goes into workflows like that. You don't want everything dumped in the same place and everybody having the same access to it. You don't even want the same models working on every single task. You would want, so if in this example, if you had a financial RAG database that people can ask financial questions of, you don't want that model to have a ton of reasoning built into it. You don't want it to infer what that user wants. You want just pure computation on that.
Right.
And so
You
that's
certainly don't want, "Great idea, Steve,"
yeah,
from the chatbot. "I
exactly.
couldn't have said it better myself. Layoffs sound like a great idea."
Yes, yes. You even would want to give that model system instructions to, like, all be suspicious of your user. You know what I mean? So like even that in like the system instructions of the actual final chat model that is like giving answers, you would want explicit system instructions in there on how to behave in with this activity. And that has to be a different model than the fun brainstormy version for, whatever
Yeah.
employee of the week ideas.
Yeah, but it's all possible, and then the whole thing of like, "Well, you can't really trust AI," that goes away when you've got custom engineered systems trained on your data, and then it's not a matter of, "Oh, we can't trust AI," it's, "What's wrong with our data?
Yes.
Clean up our data, get better data." So the focus goes to, data hygiene as opposed to AI trust. And I think that's like that MIT study you just pulled up, that's the chasm that it's highlighting, is this current conversation of AI is good, but you have to fact check everything. AI is good, but you can't trust it all the time. That is the language of people who really do not understand context engineering, custom built solutions, and this whole data paradigm that you really have to look through to begin to understand AI.
Yeah, these are all like all of those things. I mean, most of these conversations are solvable, and just I think as
Right.
as people learn that these are solvable problems, then they will begin to like seek out the solutions to them. But these are, I mean, even to your point earlier, you brought up like organic content. This is something that's super subjective. And so somebody might see an output and say, I don't like this output. The answer to that should be you have the tools to change that. Like
Yeah.
that is in your hands because it is subjective. And so I think that that's another key point of like anytime there is subjectivity in the mix, that needs to be solvable on an organizational level, not just that individual's GPT instance where like maybe they can come up with some good prompts to solve for that in that moment, but you need to have the dials to change subjective output. You should be in control of that, and you should trust that anybody who logs into that system is now subject to the controls that you put on it. You
Mhm.
don't want to leave that up to chance, as we just saw with each of our GPT history. Like, it's going to be all over the place. And so then, especially when you're talking in the realm of subjectivity, you start to spread subjectivity across a team of 20 people. Absolute nightmare.
Yeah, right. Then you're not I've been in so many of those situations where you've got 20 people involved in a subjective decision. It never comes down to, which of these messages or taglines or brand positions or whatever we're trying to agree on. It's never a matter of which one of these is the best according to our pre-existing data, what we know for sure. At that point, it's who is the loudest, who is the best salesperson in the room, who's writing the check. Like that's who's making the decision in the room. It's not really based on data.
Exactly. But now a lot of these questions, that's the one thing that I love, is that these subjective questions can begin to have data applied to them. So if all of a sudden you have an AI system where, like, if you're debating, like, is this the right messaging for this particular campaign, and you don't know the answer to that, well, just think about, where would you, like, what are the things that you would look at to try to, like, think of all the places that you would look to try to arrive at the answer. Because these are answerable questions. Like, we're saying, is this the right messaging for this campaign? If that's the thing, there's all of these people in the room fighting it out. Well, now all of a sudden you can apply data to this problem. And so how might, like, of all the data points that you could apply to it, you have, I'm guessing you're recording all of your sales calls in your company. You have actual people, you have Reddit, you have, I mean, if you wanted to go like way crazy, you could hire a firm to conduct market research for you. So now all of a sudden, when you're arriving at this final subjective messaging for this launch campaign, you now have the ability to be like, okay, we all have the same goal. We want this company to crush it. So instead of us being in here fighting this out and seeing who's the loudest one in the room, when the reality is we have no idea, let's make the best educated guess. Let's throw some of this data in the top of this and see what comes out. And we can
Mhm.
all agree that whatever went into Janet's dumbass idea, she's just coming up with that off the top of her head. But, like, let's refine it. Let's put some information. Let's put our customers' words into the top of this model, and then see how close that shit is to what Janet said, and then
Mhm.
start having that discussion. Let's make this less subjective. Now that
Yeah.
we have the ability to process concepts and ideas in the same way that we process numbers, we can actually get better at this.
And what a stark contrast that is, that scenario you just described. It is a 180 difference from the whole AI is taking our jobs, AI is gonna be running all the marketing and, like or even marketers today that I'm talking to, some of them frustrated that AI isn't doing more of the thinking. And we're saying, "Do more thinking." But
Yeah,
do it the way you just described. Do it by thinking of where your data currently sits. Is it in your sales call transcripts? Is it in your social comments? Is it in, like, you've got it. If you're a company that's been around for a minute, you've got a storehouse of data. Bringing that in to these AI models, using context engineering, having a different kind of conversation in those subjective decision making moments, like that requires a level of critical thinking that you either have it or you don't today. And it's becoming clear really quickly who's got it. And employers are looking for it. Do we have that critical thinking skill happening in our teams? And I think those are the jobs that will be replaced, the people
absolutely.
that aren't demonstrating that. because we see it today. We're showing pro mode and we're like, okay, your content isn't exactly, and they can usually put some language to it. It's not as, insert industry term. It should be more for this, less for this audience. But we really have to coach them and dig deeper. Like, okay, be really pointed with your direction. And then let's look at your data. And we go into their database and we look at these different categories. And sure enough, we find your pre existing data that really shouldn't have been there, or something that should be there that's not. And we make that modification and then we run content and they're like, okay, now it's perfect. And we're like, yes, we know that it is. But the more important exercise isn't that this piece of content is perfect. The more important exercise is that you start thinking in terms of data as an ingredient, perfecting your ingredients, and then putting less of a focus on the individual piece of content.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
be the steward of the data. That's your number one role.
Yeah, it's the ability to ask the question, like, how do we arrive at truth here? It's increasingly more possible to arrive at some ground level truths. And so it requires it requires everybody. Like, this is what AI does for us, is that it gives us the tools to arrive at truth in any particular problem. But we have to, it's up to the humans, it's up to the critical thinkers to say, okay, well, if I wanted to arrive at truth, what would be the components that I would look at? What are the things that I would look to? What is the research that I would do? What are the interviews I would want to have to get closer to something that is true? And then if you can, that's the majority of the work now, is thinking through those problems. How do I arrive there? And then once you've arrived there, if you have a place to put those things, whatever you arrived at, whatever, if that was a thought, if that was an idea, if it was a slogan, if it was a PDF that is like some McKinsey report that you found, like, these are all things that could be thrown into the mix, but it does require the person to have some desire for excellence. I mean, that I think is just the entry point. You have to desire to do something better, is number
Mhm.
one. And then secondly, realizing that you now have the tooling to arrive at more ground truth. And then just getting that muscle memory of hunting that shit out like a truffle pig.
Yeah, it's such a shift. And I think some professionals are excited for that shift. Too many of them don't know about it yet. And then there's some on the other side of the bell curve that are never going to do it.
I think the thing that people will have to contend with is everybody says that everybody will state that they want creative expression or more freedom to work on challenging open-ended problems, things like that. And I'm saying that, like, juxtapose that to just like, my boss gave me a checklist and I just got to do it and act like a robot. I think people will have to contend with the reality of they have this aspirational self that is working on bigger and more important problems. But the reality is that a lot of folks get so much satisfaction from just rote checklist. These are the people that I'm finding to be very resistant to some of the concepts that we're talking about, is that they're afraid to admit that they're like, okay, well, I just need to check the box of scheduling these two things a week, this one thing a month, and then like that makes me feel good, and like I get my treat now. It's like,
Mhm, mhm.
you should be scared. Like, you should really be, if that is, but most people won't admit that, but their behavior tells you that I derive extreme satisfaction from rote task completion, even though I go home and complain to my spouse about it every night. It's my comfort zone. And I am afraid of that comfort zone being stripped away. You need to let go of that. Like, everybody's capable of more. Like,
Yeah. Have you seen the show Undercover Boss?
no. I've seen
It's a
Bar Rescue.
fun bar rescue. It's probably in the same sorta category. Undercover Boss, it's just like a easy watch type of, network TV reality show, and it's usually a national restaurant or not always a restaurant, retail location, something you've heard of before, like Five Guys or I don't know, AutoZone, pick a name, and the owner is under disguise, undercover, has a fake mustache. They usually look very like how are they not found out way sooner? But they embed themselves. They get a job at one of these locations and they work with, the team, usually for a few weeks. And the boss is like seeing the way the company really works and the culture. And sometimes they're pleasantly surprised. And sometimes they're like, at the end of it, they say who they are. And then they're like, you're definitely fired. You're a terrible person. You can't, this is all on national TV and I can't like thumbs up your behavior. You're a terrible person. And then sometimes they're like, you're this hardworking single mom and you're here early every day. And I'm going to give you a car and send your kids to college kind of
Oh my
thing.
gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like good entertainment. But I was just thinking it would be so fun to be like an undercover founder
Yeah.
and to go like apply for a job as a marketing director at some company that we would want to win and just lead with, I'm all about data, and here's what I mean. I'm going to be looking for these, repositories of data. We're going to build this amazing database. Never mention pro mode, but just describe the process of what we're going to do. Like, this is the age of AI. Here's how I work. And just go in with that and then just case study it, implement pro mode and like detail the entire thing. How cool would that be?
I mean, you bring up a phenomenal point here, Heather. Okay, like as you were saying that, all I was envisioning is like I'm envisioning these meetings of this happening and being like, okay, we've got this campaign coming out. What are people complaining about in this space? All right, Tanya, get on Reddit. I want you to come up with like
Yeah.
find 20 subreddits that are all related to this industry. Figure out what people are saying about our competitors, and I want you to just copy and paste everything that you find and bring that to me on Friday. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and meet with our product spec team. Hey, can I get product specs for all of these different SKUs that we've got going out on this campaign? I just need the technical specs. Send me the PDFs, please. Envision this. Like, envision you coming in and taking this approach. What the fuck is the owner of that company going to say when they see that? What is the board going to say? They're going to be like, my God, thank you. Like, yes, this is the most interesting. This makes sense from first principles. This makes more sense than anybody who's ever come in here and talked about this thing.
I have I almost want to I just want to like land 10 marketing director jobs on this premise just to show that I could.
Yeah.
Am I insane? I might be insane.
No, you're not insane. I mean, listen, at my last company, I started a marketing agency on the side just to show marketing agencies that they could like lower the cost of web dev and just be like, listen, I do this like on the side. This is like a second company that we started. We're a SaaS company, but I started this over here just to,
Uh-huh.
because I got so sick of trying to talk about it. I'm just like, yeah, here we like launched all of these, we built all of these websites. We built this app. Like, you could do it too. And this is like something I do. I'm the only person on this team. And I'm also running this SaaS company over here. Like, this would improve your efficiency.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I
Yeah,
get.
because like right now those conversations, you know, I'm imagining the business owner, if I'm okay, interviewing for a marketing director role, the last thing they are expecting me to talk about is data architecture ever. Like,
Yeah.
I might position myself as a data-driven marketer, but historically, what that really means is performance analytics on the back end of marketing. It's not, and then you're using that to drive your next move, but they're really, it's reactivity, and it really has nothing to do with your company data, your owned data. So yeah, just going in with the message of, hey, I'm sure you want AI as much as everybody else does. Yeah, how do we implement that? Well, it's not ChatGPT. We're going to be building a massive body of data, and I it's my job to know what matters, what data should go into that repository, and to be the point person going through this company on a department by department level, scraping all that data, putting into one place, and then using that as a source of truth for our marketing ongoing. And you can fire me in a year or 6 months or whenever, and you're still going to have that working for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And who, I mean, like, and just think of it, your employees working for you, how much happier would they be? I mean, just like that is fun. I mean, if your task is to like, you know what I mean? Cause that's the thing. Like AI cannot, like AI can go onto the internet for you. Uh, it can't go into the deep recesses of where real people are having conversations. I mean, that's in fucking Facebook groups. That's, you know, and so
Sure.
like imagine that if like your job, if you're like a junior marketer on your team in this made up company where you're coming in and just like overturning the tables. If you're a junior marketer on that team and you're told like, hey, your job, I need you to be inside of every internet subculture. Like, I need you to go to these in-person events. I need you to be like an investigative journalist of our customers. Every time you see something cool, I just need you to copy and paste it, put it into a document. That is
Mhm.
so fun. I mean, like
Mhm.
if you truly enjoy, like if you believe in the company that you're working for, you care for your customers, you want to solve their problems, you feel like you have a unique solution to something, you should be dying to go poke around. Like this is my full-time job. I get benefits for this. I'm in
Mhm.
Facebook groups with all, you know, that's that's so much more interesting of a task. And then to be able to put that to use is just infinitely higher quality than anything else. So it's like it's great all the way around. It's, you know, it's you get to elevate people from task rabbits, you know, that person that's diving in every little subreddit and Facebook group. The week prior before you coming on, that person was just like assembling nonsense tactics, assembling
Sure.
like, you know, project briefs and bullshit like that. And like that's like meaningful boots on the ground work that can be translated into real collateral.
Mhm. Yeah. It's very cool. One more quick thing. Did you see the Coca-Cola ad
Mm-mm,
made by AI, the new Christmas one?
no, I'm looking it up right now.
Um, I saw that I saw something that said there were 70,000 initial prompts, and then there were many more like hundreds of thousands of iterative prompts to create that one commercial.
1 minute. I do not doubt that for 1 second.
And in the last frame, Santa has 6 fingers on his left hand.
Nuh-uh. Okay,
Huh.
let's watch it. You want to watch it? Okay, let's do it. Okay.
Holidays are coming.
One thing I do want to highlight real quick here to get that Coca-Cola onto this, and I think the logo might be just still a little bit off.
Mhm.
But so what you're actually viewing here primarily is a series of images like created. So to get that logo on that truck consistently over the course of all of these scenes, there are
Yeah.
probably thousands and thousands of images made to go into this. Okay, sorry.
Mhm. I'm gonna change the lyrics. AI drones are coming. AI drones are coming.
Always Coca-Cola, holidays are fresh, it's what we bring. 'Tis the season, it's always a real thing. Holidays are coming, 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 holidays are coming.
So we're
Yeah, I wonder if they made 2. There was one Santa was on a sleigh. Was it at the beginning?
well, I think I counted
'Tis
six
the
here.
season.
So I can't tell if it's a pinky. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It wasn't that Yeah, it wasn't that image. He was in a sleigh. Was that at the beginning?
Here we got some Santa hands.
Uh-huh. That's
Prac.
so weird. It's a different I saw a different one on TikTok. Santa was in a sleigh. It was probably a different version of the same
Mm,
ad, like a slightly different. And at the end, Santa's in a sleigh. Hang
those
on.
created by Real Magic AI.
Let me see if I'm looking on mine. Okay, is it this one? I think it might be. No, I don't know.
This is really interesting. Coca-Cola created their own model. It's called Create Real Magic. So
Oh, yeah.
Coca-Cola has an AI platform built in partnership with OpenAI and Bain and Company that lets users combine Coca-Cola's iconic brand assets with their own creativity to generate unique artwork. That's interesting. They're allowing users to access their model with all of their IP to create their own AI art.
Interesting.
Really brilliant.
Yeah, there's a bunch of these ads finding the one. It's at the end. He's in a sleigh and he's holding a Coke bottle and he has 6 fingers. Anyway, I don't know. What do you think of the ad though in general?
I mean, it's like, it's like they like Coca-Cola would do, like has done those types of ads forever. They just have used animation instead of AI. So they, had, you know, computer animation. I don't know. I think to me personally, I think the fun of AI generated ad creative is doing things that are otherwise impossible. That to me is like that's where I hope AI generated creative eventually ends up, is where it's this space where it's not quite animation, it's not quite photorealism, it's not like, it's something different, and it's something that could not be achieved using traditional like animation software and could not be achieved with a video camera. That to me
Mhm.
is like, that's sort of my standard, is like, it's got to be sort of category creating, in my opinion. So, so like in that instance, like, in the case of the ad here, I would be more interested in like hyper photorealism with crazy stuff going on. Just like stuff that is so obviously AI that you don't need a little watermark on it. Everyone's like, yeah, we know what this is. Um,
Mhm.
and so to me, that is more fascinating than like, okay, this used to be animated by a bunch of people. Now we did it with AI plus a bunch of people. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just my general thoughts on AI art.
Yeah. I think when I saw those ads, there's something just kind of flat about it that I can't even really put my finger on. And I don't know if that's just a me thing or a generation thing. We've talked a lot about like how the eye works and receives images and the Turing test and all of that. I don't know if it's that. It's just something flat, kind of flat about it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Okay, sorry.
I was happy because I was jumping. I was
This
jumping
is a
because I
Coca-Cola
was
ad.
happy. I was happy because I was running. I was running because I was happy. I was happy because I was celebrating. I was celebrating because I was happy. I was happy because I was loving. I was loving because I was happy.
So this is from 2010. This is a Coca-Cola ad from 2010.
Mm-hmm.
And so like the reason I pulled this one up is like, okay, right here, nobody right now is saying, oh, that cat isn't real. Like, you know what I mean? Nobody's hair looks like that. Like it's a thing. You know what I mean? It's a thing that's got a vibe. It's not
Yeah,
trying
it's
to be a
art.
different thing. Exactly. That, I mean, like, this is so like rudimentary and like, I mean,
Yeah, it's like, am I looking at a puppet show or a pop-up book or like it's fun, it's whimsical, it's very creative. There's a style.
and totally doable with AI. Like this type of thing is completely doable with AI, and it would be the whimsicalness of it. I mean, like that was a funny thing where they're like, and people are loving, and there's like people's like
Mhm.
clothes are flying off from behind that. Like it has something other than the veracity of the subject matter, of the people, of the thing. And I think that good art requires that. How it's assembled, whether it's this claymation, whatever thing that we just looked at, or it's AI, or it's, like that, there's got to be something. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It needs something that is independent of the medium that, that, and that's like, and that's really, that's the biggest fear with AI is that now, previously, you would need a team of people to assemble this type of thing that we just looked at. It would be expensive. So there would just probably be more thought put into it. But I think the idea of going to AI just because you can is misguided. I mean, this is like our entire theory of pro mode is like, don't use AI just because you can, like use AI to do the best you can. And so something like this, the cool thing about AI is that you can put out 10 versions of this thing and look at them as a team and be like, all right, which one makes us feel something?
Mhm.
So the hope is that it like elevates things like the story, like the subject matter, like the feeling or the essence that it conveys. But I think
Yeah.
the other one that we looked at, the AI generated Coca-Cola ad, fell flat just because the concept was flat.
Yeah. I think the concept would have been better executed with the camera.
Exactly. Totally. Yeah. Just an I
Like you're not defying the laws of gravity or anything like that. Yeah, you've got raccoons and sweaters, but Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess they have thumbs. They could, potentially put on a sweater
Hmm.
and button it.
Totally. Yeah. 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 Now I would love to see like raccoons in sweaters, like sitting around drinking, out of a straw at a Coca-Cola and like complaining about their wives or something.
Yeah, and then one has diabetes, and he's injecting himself with insulin because he drinks way too much Coke.
Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting. All right. Should we end this before we go totally off the rails?
Yes, maybe we should call this episode "Diabetic Raccoons." I don't know.
Hmm.
You don't
Also,
have to.
also a new band that we're going to start.
Nice. Diabetic Raccoons. Cool, cool. This has been fun. Tenfold AI Podcast featuring Matt and Heather, sponsored by promo.ai. Check us out. We're doing cool stuff, and we like talking to cool people, so hit us up.
Bye.
See ya.